Hello, my name is Jason Leahy, Executive Director of the Illinois Principals Association. Thanks for joining for this IPA talk. We've got a legal and legislative update going on for us. Appreciate, as always, when time allows, to have with me Brian Schwartz, Deputy Executive Director and General Counsel, along with Allison Maley, our Government Public Relations Director. Hi, gang. How we doing?
Hello.
Good.
Good to
Good.
see you both. Good to see you both. Okay, let's start close to home, Allison. Let's start in Springfield with everything we've got going on. Obviously, filing deadline was last week, and just for context here, today's recording date is February 10th. So filing deadline was February 7th, and we've not heard that that's been extended. So we
Yeah.
may currently have the majority of the bills, knowing that stuff can be changed as we go, but we may have the majority of bills that we're going to have. That's likely to be the case. So, and we've already had one of our bills on the move, which is
Yes.
good. So that's a piece of good news. Why don't we just start there? Talk to us a little bit about
Yeah.
Senate Bill 28.
Sure. So Senate Bill 28 is an initiative of ours and IFT. It basically removes the mandate to include student growth in teacher and principal evaluations. Now, a district can still maintain student growth as a significant measure if they choose to through the joint committees. And then for administrator evaluations, the superintendent or the evaluator of those principals and APs can choose to include that as well. But basically, it just makes it permissive. But yeah, it got out of the Senate Education Committee the first time the Education Committee met for the year on an agreed bill list. So there was an agreement between both parties that there were no questions, no problems, and so it just kind of got out of there pretty quickly. So next stop will be the Senate floor. We're hoping to get that moving pretty quickly as well, and then get that over to the House, and hopefully, get it on the governor's desk sooner than later because we want it to be effective, or it would be effective July 1. So that way, joint committees can kind of get prepared and make their decisions before the next school year and, get ready to get into evaluation season.
Yeah, I would say, along those lines, assuming that we do get it passed, and let's just say that things delay because that happens in the General Assemblies. They get tied up in their work because there's obviously a few more bills that they have to consider this spring than just this one, like a few thousand other bills. But I don't think it would. I think it would make sense now for joint committees to actually be having the conversation and just saying, "Listen, let's pick one of two paths. Like we'll keep probably on the path we're on now if nothing changes, and if this changes, this is the path we're going to take. It may be the same one, or they may choose to do something different. So there's definitely something for them to be talking about for sure.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. We'll keep
Great.
everyone posted as that moves forward.
Yeah, well, congratulations on that, Allison. That's been a long time coming. We've been working on stuff like that related to principal and teacher evaluation for a while, and hopefully can continue to make it more tenable. But this one really worked out because you had the report from AIR, American
Mhm.
Institutes for Research. That report was recently produced that just talked about, the value proposition with student growth being attached to teacher and principal evaluation, which there wasn't much one, particularly when you think about the time and investment that goes into some of those procedural aspects of things. So this is really some good news, and look forward to seeing that continue moving forward. So now we've got that. Now let's get into kind of the mass of things. Obviously, we
Yeah.
can't get into all the stuff that we've been hit with up to this point. And we'll plug this again as we go, but people can be paying attention to what's happening with our bill tracker, which you can find either the Advocate tab on the website or right there on the homepage. If you scroll down a bit under the advocacy bar, you can see the link to the bill tracker, which appreciate you, Allison, keeping that up to speed. And if I remember correctly, you're just pulling in bills that school leaders would be most impacted by there. Obviously, it's not tracking every piece of legislation that's out there, correct?
That's right. Yeah, I mean, my list as it stands right now, I've got about 717 bills that I've that I've
Okay.
identified that I probably still need to take a look at that may
Mhm.
have something to do with schools, whether it's insurance mandates or just lots of other things that deal with, schools as employers and things like that. And of course, our partners, with the School Board Association and superintendents organizations, have interest in those as well and get a little bit more involved in some of those topics. But yeah, I think I still have a few more to read, and but yeah, I've noted several of them that I think are most impactful for building leaders. So things like curricular mandates, school discipline legislation, uh, those types of things, transportation, some others, things that more are on the building level than other issues
Yeah.
are on our bill tracker, and slowly working on getting some summaries written for all of those as well. So yeah, we got quite a dump on Thursday and Friday
Yeah.
of new bills, and remains to be seen if we'll see a bunch more in the next week or so. We'll see.
So in the early going, Allison, what's caught your attention most readily here?
Yeah, I mean, I think, we kind of knew about this back in December. So ISB, with their legislative agenda, has a few bills that I think are of particular interest to our folks. One would be to significantly change exclusionary discipline for elementary school students. So limit, or actually prohibiting expulsion in grades K through 2. Limiting suspensions in those grades by only allowing the superintendent to approve those for 3 days or more, I believe is how it's written, and some other changes along the lines of school discipline. There's another bill, actually, there's two bills related to student ticketing. So one is sponsored by the agency, and the other one is sponsored by a group called Debt Free Justice Coalition. Part of Stanford Children's arm, if you will, basically to prohibit students from being referred to law enforcement for the purpose of tickets. I'm sure many people have heard about different reports that have been out there about students receiving tickets for vaping and fighting and truancy, although truancy tickets to a student are already prohibited. But this legislation, at least on ISB's end, I need to dig into the other one still yet, but on the ISB proposal would say that, there would be no ticketing at all for parents and guardians for truancy. Community service would be the only remedy for repeated violations of truancy. And then from there on, to restrict the reasonings for engaging with law enforcement in a school. And the third one I think that's of an interest as well is one on educator misconduct. So it would allow the state superintendent to share information if asked or not even with asked, but just share information about a pending investigation into educator misconduct prior to suspending a license or endorsement with the employee's school district. And then also making some of that information not confidential. So we've got some concerns there. And again, like you said, we'll be engaging with the agencies, representatives, and certainly legislators as these kind of come to pass. And we're still early yet in the legislative session to kind of see where things will land.
Yeah, and obviously, those bills were just introduced while we were getting information about some of this in concept versus the actual granular, bill itself. We still
Yeah.
have to work through and see what it looks like and what our response will be to all of that. But we definitely want to just make sure that everybody's aware that we're paying attention to that, and I'm sure we'll be looking for feedback from individuals related to these things moving forward, just so that we understand how best to proceed on their behalf. So those are a couple of things that we see initially out of the state board. Anything else in particular, Allison, that you're watching here in the early going?
Yeah, we also have been working on a bill with the Senate Democrats on mandate relief, actually. So kind of
Yeah.
pivoting the other direction. And the bill number has already escaped me. It's too early for me to have memorized them all. But we're working with the Senate Democrats, and Mary Edley Allen is sponsoring a bill that, number one, would create a mandate work group to kind of look through the existing mandates that we have. I think we've done a pretty good job of looking through the school code and identifying things that are out of date or that need updating in some way, that can be permissive instead of mandatory. So that's included in the bill. But then going forward, there'd be a mandates work group amongst stakeholders to kind of determine, as bills get introduced, as ideas come forward from interest groups or whomever, just to kind of make sure that we're not adding to, and maybe see if we can fit content where it already exists, especially when it comes to curricular mandates, things like that. So yeah, that's exciting, and I think it aligns with Vision 2030,
Mhm.
and I think it's been a good exercise for us to kind of go through the school code and identify some of those things that maybe aren't as impactful to students, or things that are outdated from years ago.
Well, and it's important since you brought up Vision 2030, good opportunity to plug that Illinois Vision 2030. If you look out on the web, you can find more information about that there as we work to do things in statute that just make schooling much better on the administrative front, making it more tenable from the administration and even the instructional side of things. Also dealing with predictable funding and making sure that our schools are safe, which are all critical priorities for us with that. And I would say, both the Senate Bill 28 with teacher and principal evaluation, as well as with mandate relief, those definitely those two bills or possibility those two bills fall right in line with our priorities with Illinois Vision 2030. It's an important time for me to get up on my soapbox and just remind everybody that the school code has doubled in size
Mhm.
in the last 20, 25 years here. In fact, the size of the now two volumes of the school code, right, Brian, that we got is like larger than the one volume that we had back in 2000. So mandate relief bills and anything we can be doing to try to take a few things off of people's plates sure make a lot of sense here. So, well, thanks for the quick kind of update from Springfield, Allison. Obviously, we got more to do or more to talk about. We will be looking to hold these updates at least on a monthly update, and if necessary, more often through the rest of this legislative session, because we're now in it, right? Even though
Oh
there's a
yeah.
week off this week, we're in it now till at least the end of May. We hope,
Yes.
no, not any longer. Oh, I guess I'd be remiss before we get to Brian on some more of the federal stuff with the state budget. We are waiting for the governor's budget address, which will be later this month. But we have heard from ISB that they're prioritizing the things that you would expect: evidence-based funding, early childhood, mandated categoricals. Early EBF, we're looking at $350 million increase if ISB's budget were passed, 75 million more dollars for early childhood and funding for mandated categoricals. But anything just budget related, Allison, we need to be paying attention to?
I think that, yeah, it'll be interesting to see what the governor's priorities are as well once he makes his address. So that'll be the Wednesday after this coming Wednesday, and just kind of see how those align with what the agencies have put forward, and not just ISB but other agencies as well. So I think we'll have a better understanding of what is available and where we're going to go from there. And of course, the legislature has the power of the purse, and so they kind of make those final decisions. But it's a long process that'll just get started pretty soon.
You bet. And with some budgetary pressures this year, right?
Yeah,
We're looking at a
yeah,
bit of a
a lot.
shortfall with $3 billion or so, and so plenty of discussions ahead related to that. So thank you for the updates. Brian, let's talk about what's happening out in DC. Sometimes, usually this time of the year, things are kind of quiet, but with the Trump administration now in office and a flurry of executive orders that have happened and some that we're anticipating coming, we got quite a bit going on and even some court cases to be paying attention to. So what do you got?
Well, the executive branch and the judicial branch have been busy. So let's start off with the executive branch and a couple of the executive orders that President Trump has signed that impact education. And the first one that certainly has received the most attention deals with immigration. There was a 2011 understanding that immigration officials, including ICE, could not go into what are called sensitive locations: schools, hospitals, houses of worship. That has now been rescinded, which would give ICE and other immigration officials jurisdiction to go into schools. From what we're understanding, it's not the intent of immigration officials to go into schools at this time, but I think schools need to be prepared and have a plan if that does indeed come to fruition. So to that end, the State Board of Education has put out guidance that I think is important for every school administrator to take a look at. We have that on IPA Connect that our folks can easily go and view. But at this time, I think it's important to remember two things. Number one, there isn't on the federal level any plan to come into schools and enforce immigration laws. And we are still, as school officials, not to inquire about the immigration status of kids. If they live in our school district and they come to us for an education, it's our obligation to educate them. So the second executive order that was just signed recently deals with transgender athletic participation, and in particular would prohibit an individual who's biologically male from either participating on a female sports team or being in a locker room designated as a girls or women's locker room. So it's important there to realize this only applies to athletics and locker rooms. transgender students are protected under Illinois' Human Rights Act. They're protected under a number of court cases and also guidance from ISB as well. So if you do have issues dealing with transgender students beyond those two areas, locker rooms, athletic participation, which are now pretty well settled, you should definitely contact your school district attorney to find out how best to handle those.
Yeah, and I was just recently on a call here, Brian, that I thought kind of articulated these executive orders pretty well. I mean, these are as I understood what I was hearing, and not to misrepresent that, but it's the executive branch's desire to try to define what they believe these various things mean, whether it be with transgender students or otherwise, versus what's actually in law. So we've got to make sure that people are following the law first and foremost, because if that's going to change, then it has a process to go through for that. Is that a fair way to kind of look at this?
It absolutely is, and certainly the issues now that we're going to be dealing with are restroom access by transgender use, pronouns and names consistent with an individual's gender identity. And there have been a couple of states, at least, that have looked into state legislation that would prohibit a teacher from using a pronoun or name other than the student's biological gender appropriate pronoun in the student's given name. So certainly something like that won't happen in Illinois, but we're going to be dealing with a number of issues with transgender youth down the road.
You bet. Okay, appreciate that. What else you got?
Well, the last one I'll mention is the change of the Title IX regulations, and of course, Title IX allows for equity based on sex and gender in education. And first we had changes to the rules, then we didn't have changes to the rules, then we had changes to the rules again. And now a court in Kentucky has vacated nationwide the 2024 Title IX rules. So when we're investigating Title IX, when we're enforcing Title IX, we'll now revert back to the 2020 rules in terms of those investigations and enforcement protocols.
Okay. Well, appreciate all of that and those updates. And I would be remiss not to just mention, while we're talking about the things that are happening federally, and I've gotten a few questions, not many, but a few questions from individuals just kind of asking, where does IPA sit in all of this, and how are we going to react? So just a couple of thoughts, with where we are. First off, just know that we are communicating often. We're meeting and talking with our national partners because they're close to what's happening nationally and paying attention to that. I was on a recent call related to what's happening with the executive orders, what we might expect moving forward, like what's the future of the Department of Ed going to look like. So that's part of it. We're also I've started meeting with state officials and other association heads, just so that we can stay in close contact with one another and kind of understand together how we can both best navigate, which is something we actually did during the pandemic, and I think that it helped us be more effective in that way. But beyond all of that, it's just important to know that we're going to be very careful. While there's politics in all of this, there's no doubt, and sometimes a political response is necessary. We're going to be sure to take a strategic, pragmatic, and consistent approach to what it is that we choose to do organizationally. And I would probably, of all of those things, just really emphasize the consistency side of it, that where our members are concerned. If you're concerned about where IPA is we're going to be tomorrow where what we are today and what we were yesterday, and you can expect the consistent type of support from us moving forward that you've always had, and just know that is rooted in the value proposition of doing what we believe is best for our young people, and just understand that that's my focus. I've got my own children that I'm mindful of when I think about decisions. I've still got 3 in K-12 education, a 7th grader, a 9th grader, and an 11th grader. And so, I'm really obviously concerned about them, their educational experience, and what's happening. So just want to share that as people are thinking about it, asking those questions, and just know that, again, we're going to be pragmatic, we're going to be strategic, and we're going to be consistent in the way that we operate and the work that we do on behalf of school leaders and the students that you ultimately serve. So plenty more to come. Obviously, it's definitely not going to be dull. I think we could say that. So anything else, guys, that we need to be thinking about?
I think that's enough.
Yeah, funny.
Like usually we get to like talk about baseball or something like that. Pitchers and catchers. Super Bowl's done. Eagles are the champs. Whether you agree with that or not. My boys sure did. I don't know. They thought Mahomes was getting too much help during the season, but I would have loved to have seen a three-peat in my lifetime. That would have been a lot of fun. But there you go. Hopefully we'll be seeing balls and strikes here pretty soon. Well, Allison and Brian, thanks so much for all your good work. Always grateful for it, and we'll do this sometime soon. Okay. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.
My name is Jason Leahy, Executive Director for IPA. If there's anything the association can do for you, don't hesitate to give us a call at any time. And check us out on the web. Sorry about that. Get a little tongue-tied here at ilprinciples.org. Take care.